built a product that was generating extra millions for the company. 6 months later, they lay me off and keep my assistant. Oh, I don't necessarily need permission to come into an industry. If I own the name of an industry, 100 employees versus me and one great domain name, then I'll beat them. Took me a year and a half waiting for Dude Ranch. Right now, I'm getting around 10,000 visits a month on Dude Ranch. We have some ranches spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year. Now I have something generating 25 to 50 for me every single year. How in the hell did you get that domain name? Somebody gets it. I accidentally bought it. I thought the auction was going to go to around $5,000, and I threw in $1,200. Nobody raised the bid, and so I won it. We started shipping farm to door 80,000 pounds 2 years ago.
What prompted that approach?
Yeah, so the crazy thing.
Before we jump into the podcast, I wanted to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Here's a short clip of Ferry from Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
This is how we landed massive links for our client in The Sun, a DR90 website, and many other UK news websites. We have used freely available data from YouGov to simply find out what the nation's favorite car brand is and which brands people love the most. Of course, Rolls-Royce came out on top, Aston Martin second, and Jaguar third. We put these insights in a short email and sent it to journalists that write about cars and to national news desks on behalf of our client. Within a few days, our client got featured in all the Suns, as well as many regional newspaper sites in the UK, gaining DR90 links to their leasing comparison website. YouGov website is full of unlimited PR stories with data already available for free. All you have to do is to start researching their data and start asking the data questions. You will be surprised of the unlimited PR campaigns that you will find there that can help you build massive exposure and links to your or your clients' websites. I hope this video is helpful and inspirational.
If you want similar link building PR campaigns for your website, head to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them now. All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Today we are joined by Peter Askew. Peter, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I think we already almost recorded an entire podcast before we started recording just by catching up and talking. I finally had to stop our conversation. Oh, let's just press record because this is too much good stuff. I'll intro you really quickly because I think it's such a cool story. So for those of you who listen every week to the interview section, obviously we've been doing this for many, many years, Spencer for 10 years, and I've been the host for a couple of years of interviewing people who are succeeding at different projects online. But we do have a Friday episode we do every week. Spencer and I talk about the latest news. And one of the segments is weird or inspiring niches. And your website came up unbeknownst to us that you owned it or anything. And someone reached out to you and said, hey, Jared and Spencer are talking about this website. You should listen. So we got connected and we're here to talk about that website we featured a couple months ago and whatnot. So it's super exciting. But before we get into all that, why don't you tell us a bit about your backstory? You've got a long history in this space, and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you, this answer changes almost it changes slightly, but yeah, no, I'm an old, late 90s .com, like flame out essentially. I came into the .com world, during the startup age in the Atlanta, Georgia area here in the USA. And got into that world, dipped my toe into the internet and became quickly hooked and, pushed all my chips into this world. Didn't have a coding background, didn't have an advertising background. I had a history degree from college. And my college had a lot of writers that came out of the college. So I don't classify myself as a writer. I like William Faulkner. He hung out at our school. I went to a school called Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. And so we have a long string of writers at the school. So I like jotting things down, writing, from time to time. But I don't mind writing content when I need to, but the web hooked me very quickly. So I had to start cobbling together all these weird, unique aspects of the web, like how the web works. You know, how do you build a website? How do you hand code HTML? And I'm not a coder, but I taught myself some of the basics of coding. What is a database? What is graphic design? So started going through that world, and over the years kept continually being laid off by companies, by mismanagement, by corporate red tape. Out of no fault of my own, I had several instances. One of my first .coms, I built a product that was generating extra millions for the company. And after I launched the product for the company, 6 months later, they lay me off and keep my assistant to continue running what I was building. And that continued over the years, and it kept bothering me severely. And I realized that in some ways I needed to save myself. So at that point, I started really going into some of the coding, how I need to learn all these aspects of paid search, SEO, analytics, what models on the web tend to generate any level of revenue, and what type of projects can I build from scratch in order to save myself. So I started doing that over the years, and I don't want to go so far into a backstory, but started building projects and found I enjoyed using really interesting niche .com domain names as sort of inspiration, buying a domain first without really an idea, identifying a domain, typically through the expiration process, using the descriptive nature of the .com domain as inspiration for the project, and wedging in a business model into a domain name and use the domain's trust and authority, sort of, to build projects around. And I had some level of success, many more failures than success, but found some, to your point, weird niche projects that were not only fun to operate, found really interesting communities to serve and overserve. The one you were mentioning, duderanch.com, was one that was oddly fascinating. I had friends in college that worked at dude ranches. I was a counselor at a camp in the mountains of North Carolina. They were out in Colorado working at a dude ranch, and we would mail each other letters. We were bored, mail each other letters. And so I was very familiar with the dude ranch vacation industry. The dude ranch domain expired. We can go into this, but long story short, background, .com burnout, self-taught coder, and kept getting laid off. So I had to kind of save myself. So I just turned into an entrepreneur. Didn't have dreams of being an entrepreneur. I was pretty much forced into this corner, and found out I sort of liked it when I was here, that I wasn't exposed to this risk of being exposed to mismanagement or poor business decisions. Now it's all on my shoulders. Now I got to make the good decisions and make sure I take care of my customers. And I found over the years, if I simply just focus on taking care of my customers, I tend to be okay, and kind of focus at it from that standpoint. And I've been doing it. I don't even know how long I've been doing it. 04, 05, I started buying domains. So I've been doing that aspect since 04, 05. I mean, I got into the web in 98, 99. Yeah. Very wordy background. So
I love it. Me. I mean, with a history 25 years long, I think you did a pretty good job condensing it to what you did. How did you, and we're going to talk about duderanch.com is certainly what got us into the interview here, and we're going to go into detail. But I guess from a high level, before we dive into that site, you do have a history of picking very interesting niches. You kind of commented on it. You do have a history of kind of niching down. Like, what prompted that approach? Because it's worked for you. We've seen it historically work over time in this space, but like, what initially caused you to focus on those things and kind of zero in on some of the more interesting, almost sub niches of the world?
Yeah. I am really a product of the expired domain name market. I got oddly addicted to this process of monitoring expired domain names every single day. So roughly every day, 50 to 100,000 .com or just domain names in general are expiring and going up for auction. All the domain registrars will put them up for auction before they re-release them out for public registration. And there is an odd sub niche of business people or entrepreneurs and that's all they do is buy and typically sell. They try to buy low, just like real world real estate, but they're treating it domain names from an investment standpoint. And I oddly got hooked on that in the early days, not with an intention to build, just fascinated with the industry. Like, how does this work? How can I buy? Can I buy and maybe flip a name, buy it for 100, maybe flip it for $250? I tried that. I wasn't very good at it, and I found it sort of boring. I tried to buy, and you can do what they call parking. You can buy it and see if there's any existing traffic and put up a parked page that's plugged into AdSense and get a percentage of the click revenue coming from any of the traffic that's coming from that specific name. I did that, kind of found it boring and wasn't very good at it. But then I had enough of a development background where I thought, well, let's just see, maybe I just try to wait and be very patient and see if an interesting domain pops up at auction. And you'd be surprised at the quality of good.coms. If you're simply patient and just patiently watch. It took me a year and a half waiting for Dude Ranch. You sit and watch and monitor I prefer .com everything. I focus on just the expiring world, and you essentially go to the different marketplaces. There are different marketplaces you can go to monitor the inventory coming up for auction. And if you just simply wait, I love that old movie called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where you're simply just sitting there and waiting and just monitoring and then running through. You're essentially a mini VC. You're looking at each domain that's coming through and you're trying to run many business models for each name that's coming through. Is it too wordy? Is it my Dude Ranch? Well, I don't want the my, I want duderanch.com. Or is it, another word that's too wordy or has a dash, maybe has a physical number in it? Or if it is a good name, okay, what is the background of that name or that industry? Is it a large ticket item? Is there a lot of money maybe changing hands? Is there a way for me to serve that industry in a unique way and serve the audience and the business owner at the same time? And at some point, I made a shift to that focus. Let me just sit and wait. I was still working 9 to 5. So I was working 9 to 5 we were at a small product startup. We were building stuff for the paid search marketplace we still had Overture in those days. So it was Overture, AdWords, Find What, they were still around. We were building a software platform for that. I'd go home in the evening and even during my lunch breaks, I was looking at expired domain names. And then duderanch.com, it expired. I was familiar with it. My friend worked at one. And then I started digging into the industry. Average ticket price for a family of 4 vacation. You typically stay a week at a Dude Ranch, $10,000 to $20,000. It's a large ticket and it's a vacation category. I love the vacation category because I can turn my business into a vacation. I love the American West. I love any excuse to go out to Jackson Hole or Denver or Aspen or DuBois, Wyoming, anywhere out there. I love going out and getting exposed to that culture as well. And once I ran some of the rough numbers, I determined, okay, this could work. And I could be another resource where the vacationing public could utilize my directory. I could capture all the Dude Ranch vacations, get kind of nitty gritty information and create a low level, just a directory to help push people in the right direction. If they've been exposed to a Dude Ranch vacation, but they simply just don't know where to go. And maybe I can help point them in the right direction and be another service for the Dude Ranchers to utilize, and cross my fingers, see if I can charge the Dude Ranchers a yearly fee to be included, or maybe have a premium listing on my site, or maybe a banner that runs across the entire website. If it's, say, a Dude Ranch in Idaho, where most folks default to Montana, Wyoming, Colorado for a Dude Ranch, but there's some beautiful Dude Ranches in Idaho. So an Idaho ranch is like, doggone it, nobody's thinking about a Dude Ranch in Idaho. So I give them the opportunity to have a banner ad on the homepage saying, hey, we have some beautiful Dude Ranches in Idaho. Consider it. Maybe it's a little bit less expensive. Maybe you're driving from Seattle and it's a shorter drive versus driving all the way down to Colorado or to Jackson Hole or even to Montana. Just give them other opportunities. And so at that point, I had enough graphic design experience. So I could just create their own banner. They didn't even have to lean on, some fancy agency to make a fancy banner. I could just, the photographs they have from all the Dude Ranchers are so beautiful. Mm-hmm. I can just take a photograph from a Dude Ranch, get their logo with a transparent background, and maybe add city state to the banner, and create their own banners for them if they came on board with me. Yeah. So that the expired domain name market was and still continues to be. I monitor the names prior to our call today. It's almost like my morning or daily paper. When I have 5 or 10 minutes, I just open up and start scrolling through the list. And oftentimes on my little Twitter feed, if I find an interesting one, like I can't develop them all. So if I find a really interesting one, I'll just share it on Twitter. Say, here's an interesting domain, like domain development idea, project. If you're looking for something, like I found one, rockinghorses.com recently. It was either plural or singular. I can't remember. I think it was plural. But I was like, what a cool, talk about another interesting niche. You could either make the rocking horses or find some boutique artist or craftsman who's making like authentic wooden rocking horses. And you could maybe be their e-commerce wing. They could focus on making them and you could focus on selling them. And maybe you get a cut of the sale to help bring their business online, possibly. Different models to run through your head, but the exploration market is fascinating to run through, and it can give you ideas, because I didn't have ideas for any of these projects. And so it started inspiring me to consider industries that were never on my radar. Dude Ranch was never, I'd never even considered jumping into that industry, similar to some of my other projects. So I found that lightly absurd aspect of it very refreshing, and that I enjoyed swimming in those waters, and being able to acquire a premium.com name was wonderful, as I'm solo or I have a few contractors that I work with, but being able to buy a .com and coming in with that muscle on an industry where I don't necessarily need permission to come into an industry. If I own the name of an industry, I, in some ways, have enough clout and authority just because I own the .com name of the industry to be able to come in and I don't want to say represent them, but represent the industry in a positive light, and utilize that .com from a good business perspective and kind of represent the industry from a good perspective as well.
I mean, duderanch.com, like you kind of called out my next question. It's an iconic domain because it almost with no dashes, no additional words, no additional phrases, .com, TLD. I mean, you got a industry cementing domain. Looking back on that, like when you find these types of domains, Rocking Chairs, Dude Ranch, like, are these typically very expensive, or are you trying to find them where they're both anchoring to an industry and quote unquote a good deal, like maybe take us back through duderanch.com or other ones you found?
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing on domains. They can get expensive. I knew Dude Ranch was going to be quite expensive, but I had saved up, and I honestly, I put most of it on a credit card, but I had saved, I was still working my 9 to 5. So as the worst case scenario, I'll just pay it off with my salary. It sold for almost $18,000, 17,949 is what it sold for at auction. It's a live auction within your browser. You're clicking a button on your mouse to raise the bid. And in that case, in most auctions these days, they get extended 5 minutes. So it can be as long as an hour, an extra 2 hours, because they keep getting extended as you run the bids up. But the neat thing, so these are really wholesale prices. So in that case, I was bidding against domain investors who simply wanted to buy it and try to flip it to someone else for maybe double, triple, 10x, whatever they wanted to sell it for. I wanted to buy and build and develop. So I had a different number that I could potentially achieve, versus they wanted to buy it for 15, sell it for 30 to 50 to 100, essentially. So I wanted to buy it, and maybe after my first year, if I could make 25 grand, and then maybe the third year make 50 grand. And now I have something generating 25 to 50 for me every single year. And so that's how I was doing some of the rough math. I sort of did backwards math. If I can get 10 ranches paying me $300 a year, then I can have this generating for me per year. How long would it take me to pay this domain name off? I can build the whole site myself. So I built the first version all by myself, all on WordPress, nothing fancy. And built it myself, did all the SEO, did some paid search, had analytics on the site, started attending conferences, Dude Ranch conferences. One of the first was in Tucson, Arizona, and then bought a booth and had a tablecloth with big, massive duderanch.com on the tablecloth. Some of those photos are in my Twitter feed somewhere. And then just started trying to, my gut feel was that industry is more of a handshake. And I was right. It's more of a handshake face to face I was like, okay, I need to start showing up. I need to start being there. So they know Peter is duderanch.com. Duderanch.com is Peter. We trust him. He's at the conference every single year. And then layered on top of that, he owns the name of the industry. And then I wanted to make sure that, I took care of those ranchers. If they had a hardship, like we had a ranch in New Mexico that had a big fire. And so I've run them for free for an entire year. Like I'm not going to pull them down because they had to shut down the ranch because they had a big fire coming through. So they already fixed the ranch, but they haven't saved up enough money from a marketing perspective. So I was like, whatever, I'll run you for free. That's no skin off my back. But looking out for the ranchers, not much to try to wedge myself into that family, so to speak, and look out for them. But I've seen, it's fun to see. I had a rough understanding how much of an impact a good.com domain might have, but it's interesting to see it, down in the weeds and be able to see the impact. When I was at that conference, we were at a ranch called Tanque Verde in Tucson, Arizona, and I had my booth. And there's a legacy dude ranch called Elkhorn Ranch, and one of the owners, Mary Miller, came up to my booth and saw my site, shook her hand. I told her more about the site, and she signed up on the spot for a banner and a listing. And wow. it was at that point, I was like, holy man. I was like, oh my gosh, this could actually work. Because Elkhorn is an old school ranch, and it didn't take much for her to see it. She's like, okay, the domain, good looking website, good enough. And then the banner is only charged a few $100 more for the banner. And then she bit, and I was like, okay, sweet. Okay, let's keep going. Now it's on me. I need to drive traffic to the site that is driven to her, so it converts into a booking for her. So I got to make sure I take care of her and drive leads, her way from that perspective. Did I dovetail way too much off your question?
I love it. I just want to give you a question and let you talk about it. It's great.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. I do want to ask I want to get into a little bit more about how you built this, because you do have a trend I've noticed where you're good at building directory style websites, which I classify duderanch.com as a directory style website, although not your typical. It's just beautiful. It's well built. It's great imagery, all that. So we'll get into that. But maybe if you could, before we dive into the details, anything you're comfortable sharing, like it does very well in search, but as a brand, like anything you can share about what this brand does now, whether it's from traffic or revenue or number of ranches you work with, just any of the high level numbers. And then I want to ask you about how you built some of the details.
Yeah. So the crazy thing, and it pushed me back onto course. So I built Dude Ranch from scratch, built it over several years, gosh, maybe 8 or 9 years. And then I became friends who ran guestranches.com. And at the time I needed some cash for another project. So I sold him duderanch.com, the old version, not the current site, because I rebuilt it recently, to raise money essentially for this new project that I thought was a slam dunk. I was just going to light it up in this new project. The writing was on the wall, and it was birthdayparties.com. I bought it. This was 2019. So I bought birthdays. I was all chips in on birthdayparties.com, and I was going to build similar directory on the birthday party industry. If you have a kid who's 6 years old, and where do you take a kid for a 6-year-old birthday party in the Atlanta, Georgia area? What are some interesting spots? Much different market, much different experience. Then COVID hit and it impacted that business. And I found I really wasn't solving any problem. I didn't seem, and the industry wasn't as receptive as the Dude Ranchers were. The Dude Ranchers really did adopt me in and pull. There's been an interesting dynamic. I build some of these sites, and sometimes I build, and there has to be another side where the industry sort of adopts me or pulls me in. There has to be some sort of relationship there. So I built the birthday parties, and there wasn't that type of, I don't want to call it a marriage, but there has to be that sort of relationship for it to work really, really well. Because I want to make sure I'm serving them. I'm not going to force someone down a business down their throat if it's simply not converting. And birthday parties never hit that. Not to say that it couldn't. I think it still could. Maybe I'm not the right person for that type of model, for that type of industry. And so at that point, I was still friends with the owner who bought Dude Ranch from me. So I was saying, gosh, man, I wish I still had that site back. I should probably buy that bike from him. So I started peppering him with questions. Hey, you want to buy and sell duderanch.com back to me? I'll give you twice as much as I sell it for you for. And so he just turned 70. He's my partner. He ran Guest Ranch. He was like, hey, I think I may just want to sell the whole thing. You want to buy that? I was like, yeah, I'll figure out how to buy the whole thing. So he had been running Guest Ranches since 1998, and he already had a book of business. So I was like, okay, I can buy both sites back, rebuild both, buy the book of business, which is it's a challenging business, but it still works. But traffic wise, so I bought both. I rebuilt both over the past year, all on WordPress. I roughly spent around 200 grand for the entire acquisition. Let's see, then rebuilt everything. Traffic wise, it's been doing much better since I rebuilt it. Thank goodness. So I'm getting right now, we have a spike in the Dude Ranch industry. In January, everyone starts planning their summer vacations. It's crazy. Every year, spike, January. And then June is usually when the season begins. Then it starts tapering off. Right now, I'm getting around 10,000 visits a month on Dude Ranch. Guest Ranches is getting about 6,000 to 8,000 visits a month. So that's just traffic wise. I'm still trying to see how much this project makes. We think it makes currently maybe like 50 grand a year, something like that. It isn't tremendous, but I might be able to grow it. The wonderful thing on it, there isn't much overhead. It's just only this heavy investment that I've made just to try to get it paid off. So I'm trying to, for the first year, I'm honestly letting the dust settle to see where I am, who is renewing, who can I get back. And I had one ranch that had previously canceled, but my rebuild has generated enough traffic where at our most recent conference, we were in Fort Worth, Texas. I saw one of my ranchers there in Montana, and they walked up and this quote out of their mouth, Peter, I don't know what you did, but about 6 months ago, the traffic from your site all of a sudden went back up. And I was like, well, thank the Lord. It's like, well, Ron, I rebuilt the site. So I'm so glad you're seeing some traffic because I see it on my side. I can see outbound clicks that are hopefully leading to you guys and converting. Hopefully they're converting. And so he wound up re-signing back up. I was like, okay, one at a time. This is not a spray and pray. It's a fascinating business because it's very much relationship driven. And I know most of the Dude Ranchers on a first name basis. I've been in it well over 12 years now. And now it is, and they'll let me know if I'm not doing my job. Dude Ranchers are very blunt. And I love that. They will tell me if I am not doing my job. And so I like it's such a different model than some of my other projects, which are sometimes transactional, but they come back every year and where I might have a physical product that I box up and ship out. Or, I run a job board for the ranching industry. So I also serve the ranchers from an employment aspect as well. But yeah, that's rough traffic, rough revenue. That revenue can go up and down pretty quickly, but this one's similar to my Vidalia project. It's just something I've kind of gotten into. I really adore the industry. I love exposing folks to this industry because it's such a great vacation to take yourself or significant other or family members on to get kids, unplugged and get them away from a screen and they can go play in a creek. And they go shoot a gun or ride a horse or go fly fish in a pond at the ranch or go look at the Grand Teton Mountains. It's a fascinating industry.
I have to say, you've got me while we're talking, just poking around. I've got a young family myself. Took them to Yellowstone National Park 2 years ago.
Beautiful.
Got me looking at all these Montana and Wyoming dude ranches here.
Yeah, Moosehead. Go check out Moosehead. They're right in Jackson Hole. They have private property within Grand Teton National Park. The background on that ranch is fascinating, but the views of the Tetons are just in your face. It's a neat one. There's so many neat ones. It's tough to cherry pick.
Oh, it's so good. It's so interesting. I think you've done a good job with the site capturing the beauty that most of these kind of embody. Now let's talk. Let me ask you about that monetization you're talking about. In essence, the site structure is a directory. It's a directory of a lot of different dude ranches. You have a very interactive map on the homepage. You have filtering. You have, price ranges, kind of like what you would imagine, almost like I don't want to insult you, but almost like a Travelocity of dude ranches, right? Like you really make it easy for someone to segment, sift, find the location they want to be at, find the price range they want to be at. And you have individual pages for a lot of these dude ranches. So is the pricing model straight advertising where they just pay a yearly fee? Do you get a kickback on any of the bookings? Is that trackable? Is there any other monetization besides just an ad rate?
Ad rate. Mainly I stuck with that because it's nice and simple. It's really what the dude ranchers told me they wanted.
It is.
A few dude ranches operate on, they'll deal with travel agents. Not a lot. A very small percentage do. The overwhelming response that they told me on how to charge essentially was just charge us. They don't want to, they're dude ranchers. They don't want to dig through their log files or look at their analytics to understand how many clicks, how many calls. Okay, did Joe and Susie convert or not? Now, where did that conversion come from? Did it come from Google Maps, or did it come from Peter, or did it come from the association? Or what you'll find when you're traveling, I do the same thing when I research for travel, I'm a fruit fly. I'm going all over the place. Now, where are you going to attribute that conversion from? I've been to 10 different websites. Which website gets attribution? Like, no one's going to know. I want to be arguing with them. No, I'm the one who drove the lead. I was like, I don't want to do that. I just want to charge them because the branding is worth a lot in my perspective. And that's what I try to, it's the branding, the click, and the call. And hey, if somebody sees you listed on my site and then goes maybe to the association, they also see you, then they visit your Google page and they see you have a 4.9 rating. Okay, that's probably enough background and exposure to your site to initiate a phone call. That helped that you were listed on all sites. Now, whether they clicked on your listing through my site, visited your website and saw your phone number and called, that probably occurs as well. But it's mainly just making sure you're there. That's what I tell the dude ranchers. Like this is a branding exercise to make sure you're there and you're at every small touch point. And I try to make our rates reasonable. It's usually $500 to $1,000 a year to be listed, and then you can stair step up. We have some ranches spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year to have multiple listings throughout the site. But the base is around $500-$600 just to be listed on the site.
Hey, just a quick break. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. Just a quick reminder that today's episode is sponsored by Search Intelligence. Now, I've got a short clip from Ferry with Search Intelligence showing you how their agency built digital PR links to a client's website.
What a crazy campaign. How to sleep on your back. This campaign got us links in Huffington Post, Glamour magazine, Mirror, and lots of other great news publications. Let me show you how we've done it. It was so simple. Our sleep client provided us with expert commentary about how to train yourself to fall asleep on your back. They also gave advice on why it's best to sleep on your back. Once we've had this information, we went to Muckrack and searched for journalists that consistently write about sleep and well-being. We've sent these journalists the advice provided by the client, and within 1 day the links started flowing in. Glamour magazine, a DR81 website, picked it up. Huffington Post, DR88, Mirror UK, DR90. A massive avalanche of links blasted to our client's website with this simple yet effective campaign about how to sleep on your back. I hope this inspires, and I hope you'll use this technique to land massive links to your or your client's website.
Are you looking for similar link building PR campaigns for your website? If so, just go to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them today. What else have you done to the site besides a redesign, all the things we talked about, a directory that features, different, is there any other content, any other things that you've done from a high level to grow the site?
Well, I don't know if this qualifies, but when I visit ranches, in the early days, I had it on my iPhone. Now I bought a 360-degree camera. So I'll go take 360-degree photographs. If you go, it may be on the top menu, 360-degree photographs. So choose a ranch. I upload all the photos to Google Maps. So you can drop a pin. You can see, like I visited Bar Lazy J in Colorado, and I took a 360 near their pool. I was like, that might be something interesting a family might want to look at, is what does their pool look like? So I took one near their pool. They have a zip line across the Colorado River, which is amazing. So I took one near their 360 zip line right at the top, and you can see the line go down across. It's the only zip line across the Colorado River, which I didn't realize they were. So yeah, so I've been doing this so long. I've been capturing those. So I have them for a good 15. I don't know how much traffic it's driven me. I think it's another small feather in our cap just to show folks, hey, this is a legit, somebody's doting on this site. And I want to be the person doting on the site, doing small little tweaks. Like, who else would a competitor do that? Unlikely. That'd be kind of expensive for them to fly out and visit all those ranches versus me. I usually, at least once or twice a year, I'll fly out to a location and spend 4 or 5 days just driving around to do ranches. Like this year, I may go to Jackson Hole. Last year, I went to the Denver area and did a big circle around Denver, visited Bar Lazy J, Sea Lazy U, a whole bunch of other ones. And then just like I mentioned, it's kind of a relationship business. So just make sure I meet with my partners and try to get feedback from them. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Is there anything I need to tweak? Or what are your pain points? Maybe there's something I can shift on the site to address a pain point you're having and try to get some feedback. And they're just great people. They're fun to meet and hang out with. And a lot of times I've never been to their ranch. So it always just helps to come see them in their home turf. And then it's so much nicer to see them at the conference. Now I know where they're from. I know what their ranch is like and what their focus is, if they're more equestrian focused or more working cattle focused, or if they're just a luxury ranch like Arthur Blank, of all people, the owner of the Falcons, owns a dude ranch in Montana. And it's high-end luxury, has a spa, it rivals any Relay and Chateau or 5-star Condé Nast Johansson hotel I've ever been to. It has hot tubs, pools, spa, and like high-end food, all neat stuff. But there are those types of ranches as well. So it's fun to go visit and get a feel of the kind of the essence of each ranch. So I can either pass that along through the site or over the phone if folks are looking for like a boutique recommendation. We provide a little bit of that. I have an old friend, an old ex-dude rancher that helps out. He does a little concierge call. Like if somebody wants a cherry-picked recommendation, they can lean on his wisdom. He's a he's been the president of the Dude Ranchers Association, and he was the president of the Colorado Dude Ranch Association. So he's visited virtually every dude ranch out there, and he knows the nitty bitty that's different between every single ranch. I visited about 51 or 52 dude ranches.
Wow.
And he's visited, I think, well over the 100, and there are only about 100, 125, I believe, in existence. There may be a few more that I'm not counting out east. But he's been to a lot and he knows them really, really well. So, and he was nice enough to kind of volunteer. Well, he gets paid. He charges a small amount. I think he charges $40 for essentially unlimited time. He says it's a 30-minute or an hour call, but he'll donate as much time as you need to pick a vacation. So those are some small ways that we try to differentiate and drive extra traffic to the site, those 360s.
Talk about how you've parlayed duderanch.com, and you've kind of teased it a little bit. So you've already gone into it, but I know in our agenda, we've talked about duderanch.com, into ranchwork.com, into ranchjobs.com. I mean, you've gone beyond just this website. What are the other projects associated with it? Like, talk about ranchjobs.com. Last I could see, you did an update on it in 2020. It's pretty new at that point. Like, what's going on with that now? And is it a similar setup, just in a slightly shoulder niche?
Yeah, shoulder niche. I could bore you to tears with some of these projects. It was owned by the owner of guestranches.com. So he and I started working together. And then I asked him, I was like, what other projects do you have? This was right before my Vidalia project. I was like, David, what other domains? He already bought Guest Ranches. He hand registered it. I was like, what other interesting names do you have? So he just let me look at his whole portfolio. And in 98, he did build a job board focused on the just ranching industry, dude ranching, cattle ranching, just outdoors employment, essentially. And I have this. If you go to ranchwork.com, ranchjobs.com redirects into ranch work. If you go to, I think it's the About Us page, I have some early photos of the early, it's like classic early, late 90s design. And so he had that, but he had focused most of his time on guest ranches. So the site was old and stale, hadn't been updated. And I was like, this has possibilities. I had a friend in Atlanta that ran a nursing job board and did quite well with it. And I thought, well, my friend Shane did okay on his nursing job board. Maybe I already know a lot of dude ranchers. I can probably help fill them jobs. I don't know any cattle ranchers, but screw it. Let's try it. I don't need much to start this on. Let's give it a shot. So I talked to David. We did a rev share. I gave him 25% of the revenue. I kept 75%, but I was going to do all the development. He didn't have to lift a finger. He kept the domain. I do all the development. He just has to point the name servers to me. I'll do all the work. So we tried it, and the dang thing instantly started getting traffic. And then so I started trying to focus from an SEO perspective, just making sure it was fast and easy to navigate. This was at that time, it was an off the shelf job board theme. I wanted to make sure it was mobile, responsive, and started taking just one-off payments. So it wasn't, I invoiced most of my dude ranchers. This was plugged into Stripe. So they wanted a job listing. I think at the time I was charging at the start, maybe 20 or 25 bucks for a job listing, but also had free. They could go submit a job. I would personally curate. I still personally curate every single listing that's coming through on the site. And so it just started working, thankfully, and it's generating 90 to 100,000 visits a month now. Usually 300 to 500,000 impressions per month. And I go up head to head against, Indeed, Simply Hired, Monster. And I continue, cross my fingers, just to carve out. It's a slow carve out, just to slowly bring all the ranchers, but it crosses all domains on the ranching side, which I enjoy. I can still serve my dude ranching community, but I also go out heavy into the cattle ranching, equestrian, private ranches, and sometimes just recreational ranches that are in someone's family and they need a ranch manager to stay there until the family comes out to do recreational things on the ranch. So I can fill all those types of jobs, caretakers, all those types of jobs. And then I rebuilt it. I bought the site from him in 2017. I think I rebuilt it in 2013, 2014, if my numbers are correct. But then it was doing well enough. I was like, I need to bring this thing in house. David needed some cash. I was like, perfect. I'll buy this thing from you and I'll keep rolling, give you some cash. I'll buy this and bring this in house. And then right after that, Vidalia expired. The VidaliaOnions.com domain expired because I look at that dang list every single day. I accidentally bought it. I thought the auction was going to go to around $5,000. And I threw in a bid around $2,200. I thought I was going to be immediately outbid, and nobody raised the bid, and so I won it.
Vidalia Onions.
Yeah, plural, VidaliaOnions.com. And I was like, oh man, God, I do not have this free money right now. I do not have it. I'll dump it on a credit card and figure out how to pay for it later. And it's been one of the rare ones that was constantly needling me, saying you should think about maybe building this out. I was like, what is it? I can't do a directory. It's not under really farmers. And I was like, well, I buy those pairs from Harry and David every year. Who's doing that for Vidalia? Who does that really well? Who ships Vidalia's farm to door? And I was in Atlanta at the time. And so it was only a 3.5 hour car ride from me. It's like, shoot, I'll just drive down there. Let me see what happens. Let me see if there are any farmers who might be interested in trying this project. And I got introduced to the Vidalia Onion Business Committee, and they got it immediately. They instantly said, mail order. We need help with mail order. The entire industry needs help with mail order. We'll introduce you to 3 farmers. So they introduced me to 3 farmers, became friends with the 3rd farmer I met. And he and I gave it a shot. This is 10 years ago. And we started shipping, and it's the only physical product, and it is, and it's direct to consumer physical product, and not even just physical. It's seasonal perishable. So if you want to even like multi-niche into multi-niche. But it works. And some of those challenges are actually advantages. because you can only grow Vidalias within the state of Georgia. It's a very boutique crop. You use a lot of terroir. You can only grow this onion in Georgia and call it a Vidalia. You can take the seed to Texas and grow it if you want, but you can't call it a Vidalia. We have a unique soil down in South Georgia that's very loamy, low sulfur. So it creates this onion that's doesn't have as much sulfur and as much pungency as a typical onion. A lot of my customers eat them like apples, if you can believe it. And so they're very easy to cook with. And so we started shipping farm to door. And then over the years, I think we shipped 80,000 pounds 2 years ago. Our crop got hit a little last year. I think we were down to 60,000 pounds shipped last year. So those tend to be my three projects right now. It's Dude Ranch, ranch work, Vidalia. But I also always do have some just piddle project. I always enjoy just starting something from scratch. And honestly, it's almost like a re-education, because SEO and even paid search analytics, they change so often.
Yeah.
So rather than me reading a book about maybe what's changed, I'd rather just launch a new project and see, okay, what's working these days? Do I need to focus on maybe less inbound links, maybe more social stuff, or better content, or a faster site, or this type of design element might help from a ranking, or what's a better way to capture new customers? I always seem to be piddling. And one of those is SavannahWedding.com, which is just a simple wedding directory for the city of Savannah. Has a lot of weddings down here. So I thought it'd be fun. So I acquired that domain for like $1,000 and built it out recently, just as a nice, clean, simple way. If somebody is in South Georgia somewhere and maybe they're an hour away, they don't live in Savannah, but they're trying to plan. They just want to know, who are folks that I can consider that are somewhat trustworthy, that have been kind of curated, cherry picked, and listed on this site. And I can just get an early to-do list of folks to consider. So I'm slowly begging. It's a marathon. I'll just hold that one for probably, I don't know if I'll ever even sell it. It'll just be a fun one to have, to build and play with, as on the side. But the primary three are the really ones that I focus on, and my time kind of shifts across them throughout the year. Vidalia season will start in late April, early May. So I'll be focused on it a fair amount, maybe 60, 70% of my time. And then I'll have a little bit, 10, 20% for Dude Ranch, 10, 20% for ranch work. Dude Ranch in the summers, late summers, typically goes a little bit more Dude Ranch when I go visit some of the ranches, but there'll be times when I'm at a Dude Ranch fulfilling Vidalia orders and curating ranch jobs at the same time. Is weird. And then, I sit back like, what have I done? I was like, Jerry, what have I done with my life?
Well,
I was like, this is great.
Almost all the projects I've heard you talk about are kind of directory based, but to your point, Vidalia Onions is not. You thought about how to create a directory out of it. I'm with you. I can't think of a great way. So you went a different direction. How has that been? What's been different about basically a non-directory brand? I mean, this is a true, well, you tell me what it is actually, because I have some thoughts about it, but like, what's different about this and what's led to it being successful? What did you have to learn about the differences there to make the Vidalia Onion project successful?
I got lucky in it that the foundation of that industry had already been established before I came in. So I was essentially riding the coattails of a very, very strong brand. The Vidalia industry is considered the caviar of sweet onions. So chefs around the world just belt their praise for this onion. If you watch YouTube videos, they'll always talk when Vidalia season starts, and they'll say, okay, get a sweet onion. If you can get your hands on a Vidalia, get your hands. If you can't, another sweet onion will be just fine. So their authority in the market is very, very established. And it's just an excellent onion to prepare with and to eat. Just super low sulfur. They don't make you cry when you cut them open. They're so low sulfur. And I was already familiar with them. I wasn't a heavy consumer of them, but I was very familiar with them, just being born and raised in Georgia. But there was a very, very loyal following. So I wasn't trying to overcomplicate things. I was just simply trying to find a community that was already lined up at a door and waiting to place an order, but just nobody had opened the door and simply accepted their money yet. So when I was researching that industry, I was like, who is serving? I assume customers are looking for Vidalia's online. And I can see that within, any of the search tools. Who's searching just for the broad term Vidalia Onions? Okay, is anybody searching for buy Vidalia, purchase Vidalia? And that search volume's there. I was like, wow, okay, some people are trying to buy them. Who are they buying them from? So I'd search, I'd find some of my existing competitors. One competitor, I think still to this day, they have this. They have a PDF sheet, and you can go and hit print, and you print the sheet, and you write your order on the 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. You write your credit card number on the piece of paper, and you snail mail it to them. And then whenever they get it and they feel like it, they'll ship you some Vidalias. I was like, man, I know how to make that easier. I can have a WordPress site as my homepage, and then I can just plug it into Shopify on the back end, take the orders, and they get instant tracking through my UPS implementation, and I can send them updates all along the way. If they place an order on a Sunday, we can ship Monday, and if they're in the Southeast, they'll have the box by Tuesday. And so we're trying to somewhat mimic the Amazon experience. If we can do it, West Coast, it gets there to 4 to 5 days, but we can ship on a Monday and get it there by Friday, direct from our farm to someone's front door. But I was fortunate, but that one has taught me where I try my best not to overcomplicate some of these. I don't need an Uber idea. There's so many small low-hanging fruit projects out there that still aren't being focused on. If somebody's trying to build something from scratch, I just happen to be stuck on really good .com domain names. I like starting with that unfair advantage. And I see them as these really strong unfair advantages that give me the ability as a small builder to go up head to head with companies that are 50 times my size, 100 employees versus me and one great domain name. I'll take those odds every day of the week. You have your junk domain, give me the name of the industry. I'll go head to head and use SEO, paid search analytics, and overserve that customer. And I'm pretty confident I'll beat them. And now it's not to say we can't both coexist in an industry, but I can wedge myself in and do, I think, an even better job than a company a whole lot bigger than me. Did I answer your question?
You did. I'm fascinated by literally, you said it, like almost trying to be the Amazon of Vidalia Onions. That's such a different online experience, and so many people listening are going to be used to. I mean, we can get our minds wrapped around directories. A lot of us aren't doing directories, but we've had a couple of people on to talk about those. Tim Stoddart was a great interview from last year who really went into those depths. So I can get my mind around that, but hearing how you talk about Vidalia Onions is such a different experience. But again, something that probably a lot of people are not willing to do with an online project. You get an age domain and someone's not willing to roll up their sleeves and actually go fly out to meet a Dude Ranch, to meet a Vidalia Onion association. So I think it's really interesting to hear you kind of walk through it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I sort of noticed that as well. And I'm not to say I'm great at doing it. I just simply tried it. I wrote an article on how I acquired that duderanch.com domain. And there was the first conference that I went to. It was some heavy imposter syndrome. And I didn't feel like, I was like, what am I doing here? I was like, I felt like a fraud. I mean, all the classic traits, but I was like, just whatever. I have the name. I have the name of the industry. So if anything, and so I walked up this first Dude Rancher, and this is in this little essay that I wrote, but they're from a ranch up near Whitefish, Montana called Bar W. And I had my name tag, Peter Askew, duderanch.com. And I was like, these Dude Ranchers are going to understand what I'm doing, but they'll understand a rough idea of a directory. And so this Dude Rancher looked at my name tag, and I was like, I'm Peter Askew. And he stopped me. He was like, and he said, how in the hell did you get that domain name? And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody gets it.
Yep.
And I was like, Dave, it's a long story. I'll bore you, but it's a long story. And I was like, okay, that. And I was like, okay, I sort of feel welcome. I can do this. I just need to go and just, get out of my comfort shell. You can get in that world, sitting where we are, just nice and comfy at home and not trying to push myself. And I oddly do like to push myself into corners where I don't necessarily belong. but finding a way to serve a specific audience. And Vidalia is quite different because a lot of times we speak to it's an older clientele sometimes, and a lot of those customers like to order by phone. So we have a phone order line if they want to order by phone. And I manned it for 9 years. I have my friend finally helping me this year just with talking and they'll talk to you for 20, 30 minutes, but it's perfectly fine. I know. I was on a call. I did an early call just this season, and it was like a 20 or 30-minute call. And I was like, man, I made like $1. And if I actually counted for my time, yep. I was like, whatever, that customer is going to come back next year. So I'll make the money next year. It's just all fine. And I was like, I'm actually supporting myself with these projects. It doesn't matter. Nobody can tell me yes or no, get off the phone with that customer, get back to work. It's like, it just feels right to me. It feels right to talk to them. A lot of these customers don't like using the computer. Sometimes their vision is impaired in some way, so they just prefer speaking, or some people just prefer talking to a human being, especially with Vidalia, because they always want to make sure that they're buying an authentic, a real Vidalia. A lot of people try to pass off another sweet onion as a Vidalia. They're that prized. So people try to sell fakes. So they always want to make sure, am I selling the real thing? Are you guys legit? And so oftentimes they'll try to call and run me through the ringer, ask me questions. Well, where are you? Where are your fields? I'm like, well, they're in Toombs County. And we grow them right down. We have about 2 or 3 fields. When do you harvest? Okay, we harvest these dates. And then our packing shed, we also have a packing shed, and our packing shed's here. And now I have a YouTube channel. So now I can just forward them.
I saw that.
If you want to watch us like grow an entire cycle of Vidalias, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and then you can watch us grow from seed to transplant to stalk to harvest to pack and shed, and you'll see them going into the box that we ship out. And so I haven't finished that yet. We've been doing that for the entire 2024 crop, and it's been fun. It's a lot of work just filming and editing, but I know it's somewhat evergreen content, which I like. I'll be able to show and point people that way. If you want to see a peek behind the scenes, you can see not only the growing, but we have a packing shed. Not a lot of Vidalia farmers have a packing shed as well. So a full pack. We have a thing called a palletizer, a big robot arm that'll pick up 40, 50-pound boxes and stack them up. Then we shrink wrap them. Or individual boxes around. But that one is quite different from a customer support standpoint. Very, very different. Slightly similar to Dude Ranch, but it is a lot of empathy and a lot of listening and making sure those folks are taken care of and making sure those boxes land on their front door and making sure they're being taken care of.
There's a couple of things I want to kind of call out as we come to a conclusion here. And I wish we had like another hour. Maybe we'll do a part 2. This has been super fun. I mean, you have typically gone into niches where, and I might be overstepping a bit, but from hearing you talk about it for the last 45 minutes or so, you've typically stepped into niches where technology is not a big player yet, and you've brought that. And so perhaps that's also helped your projects take hold. Like I think about the Vidalia onion industry, the Dude Ranch industry, like you've brought a technological solution in an industry that maybe is more typically, sending over credit card forms and making phone calls. And that's interesting as people think about buying an age domain and diving into a project. You seem to have a knack for finding industries that are very underserved in this type of world.
I would agree with you. That wasn't done on purpose. It's more I backed into those wound up happening. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm simply sharing the highlights. I have so many crash and burn projects that are that I've shut down over the years. These are simply the ones that worked. And I mean, birthday parties being one, I probably spent 50 or 60,000 on it just to build it up, and it went absolutely nowhere. But it is, I do farming and ranching. Oddly, I a lot of times when folks sometimes ask, what I do for the world, I sometimes just come off. I'm in the onion business typically. And then if they ask more, maybe I'll dovetail into some of the web stuff that I work on. If they ask more, I'm really ranching in agriculture. I'll start there, maybe dovetail into some web stuff. It is. And I think there's even more opportunity just for other style of farmers that might be selling maybe beef online or maybe other boutique, mushrooms, truffles are fascinating. That industry has fascinated me, finding an interesting truffle farmer and maybe trying to give them some some muscle online.
Yeah.
But I'm such a I'm spoiled baby. I want my good.com. So I'd want like truffle.com, but
you
but
won't
I
do
had
it
the
if it's got a dash. You're not going to buy it.
I'm not going to buy that. I don't like that. I don't want that instant headwind. I want the name of the industry. I mean, we had a couple years after we were in Vidalia, I acquired onions.com. So we acquired it from and just used some of the profit from that year and bought onions.com. And we just have it lightly built out as really a landing page to point people to Vidalia. We also own organiconions.com, which we just acquired a couple months ago. But it primarily is its primary use is for my farmer, for his email. He uses his first name at onions.com, and man, he loves it. And that could be its entire purpose, just serving as his email address, because he gets such a kick out of it when he goes to a conference and somebody asks for his email. His name's Aries, and he goes Aries at onions.com. And then his farmers are like, hang on now, how did you get that name? He was like, I think he calls me web guy. He says, I got a web guy. He gets all that. You'll see him he's in the YouTube videos. That's Aries.
Oh, that's great.
Well, so I love being behind the scenes with him and giving him the muscle that he deserves, because he's so focused on his operation. And man, the amount of responsibilities on his shoulders just trumps whatever these small little knick-knack issues that I might run against. I mean, he's running a packing shed of 50 to 100 people, running a farm where it could be impacted by Mother Nature at a moment's notice. So some of what I run into is small, but I love being able to work behind the scenes and give him the muscle that he deserves.
Well, I love what you're doing. I'm going to just make a final call out, just for the listeners, not to start something, but obviously a lot of people have heard recently. This will date itself nicely, but Google updated their SEO starter guide and made reference to maybe people should start handing out business cards more than they should focus on search results. And obviously the SEO industry had a field day with that. But if you come out of an hour with this interview with Peter, I think you'll know a little bit about what Google's talking about right here. Yep, there we go. I had a feeling. Yep. You live in the business, and it's doing well because the business is a viable, well searched out, well sought after business, and you're on the ground. So maybe there's a little bit of truth to exactly what that was. But Peter, I tell you, man, I'm inspired. I really enjoyed this interview a lot. Thank you for coming on. Where can people follow along with what you're doing? I know I follow you on Twitter, but where do you want to direct people?
Twitter is pretty much where I hang out. I'm at Searchbound. It's an old reference to Search World. So Searchbound, SEARCHBOUND. I'll share domains, the expired domains. I try to find, I don't try to share junk. If I find a really good, solid domain that's currently up for auction, I actively post those. And then I'll give my 2 cents. Maybe it could be built as this or that. So I'll post those, or post onion photos. If you want to see photos from the onion field, or Dude Ranch photos, I'll share Dude Ranch photos that I'm sharing. Or if I'm rebuilding some of the sites, I try to share behind the scenes, just because I watched other people, and that inspired me to see what other people were building, or dead ends they were reaching, or certain aspects that were working on their site. So I just try to share as much as I can to give other folks maybe they take one nugget from what I'm working with, or maybe multiple nuggets from multiple people and try their own project. Because I did not intend to be an entrepreneur. I did not intend to go down this path. I was sort of forced down this path and then realized it was where I wanted to be. I sort of try to inspire that type of person who didn't quite maybe expect to be here, but maybe to give them a nudge, to let them give maybe a side project a shot. Maybe it's always just a side project, but maybe it helps pay for your kids' college. Maybe it helps pay for your yearly vacation. That's wonderful. If you have a great 9-to-5 job that you enjoy, dude, knock that out and have a cool little side project that pays for vacations. That's wonderful.
It's great. Well, Peter, thank you for joining us. We'll link to the sites we talked about in the show notes, along with your Twitter handle. And I hope to catch up with you again soon. Thanks so much.
No, Jared, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
In this video, I will show you how we landed a placement on BBC and dozens of links in massive regional online publications such as Where's Online, Daily Post, and many more. This PR campaign was about the easiest place to pass your driving test for the first time in the UK. This is how we've done it. We simply went to the Vidalia website, found the latest car driving test data by test center, and downloaded the data in a CSV format. Once we had the data, all we had to do is to to look at the number of total tests per test center. Then look at the number of first time passes to calculate the percentage of people who passed their test for the first time. Once we had the percentage numbers, we created a press release with our findings. Then we went to Roxhill and found journalists who talk about driving tests, and also looked for journalists who write in regional publications in the UK. In total, we have found about 1,800 journalists and sent them our press release by email. Within less than a day, our story got picked up by BBC, Cornwall Live, Wales Online, and dozens of other publications in the UK, providing our client a tsunami of backlinks perfectly relevant to the audience of the client, who is a specialist in learner driver car insurance. I hope this video is helpful and it shows you how you can also build links with freely available data from official sources.
If you want similar link building PR campaigns for your website, head to search-intelligence.co.uk and get in touch with them now.